My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
Welcome to Property Profits Podcast. My name is Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave DeBow. And, if you've ever wondered how to build a thriving real estate portfolio in a small town, my guest today, Greg Eaton from Cranbrook, BC, has the answers. With 19 years of slow and steady growth, learning from mistakes, and his passion for community impact, Greg's story is one you don't want to miss. So we're going to explore his journey from Calgary to Cranbrook, and his latest idea, his latest, future plan here in the build to rent market. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you very much, Bryce. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So there's a lot to unpack here, but let's go right to the beginning and talk about, usually the origin story has something to do with an airport and a Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, but how did you get started?
Yeah, there's some similarities there. So I bought my first rental property in Calgary. I was born and raised in Calgary, and bought a little half duplex with an illegal suite in Calgary. And I moved into the basement. And
we like to use the word non-conforming.
Non-conforming, sure. Yeah, we can use that term. And at the time, I didn't know where that ball was going to roll and what it was going to do for me. But all I knew is that the tenant was paying my mortgage, and that to me made sense at 24. And then I was working at the time fixing hot tubs and just sort of doing the daily grind. And a year later, one of our hot tub salesmen came up to me, and he owned some rental properties. He's like, "Greg, I got this rental property. It's a great place. You should buy it." And I said, "Well, I just bought my first first house. I make $20 an hour. I can't buy another house." And I said, "Talk to my mortgage broker and just see what they can do." And so I did. And turns out this was a legitimate deal. And they were able to pull out some equity out of this property that I just bought, roll it into the second deal. And, there I was. And so I was 25 with two properties, and I guess it was 4 suites in total. And, I thought I was king of the world. And
you're a landlord at 25.
Yeah. And at that time, we're talking like 2005-ish. The market was hot. Things were going up really quick. And I was just riding that wave. And I thought, boy, this is just, I'm going to get filthy rich.
I'm a genius.
Yeah, exactly. And so then about 2007, late 2006, I was like, you know what, I want to move to the mountains, and I want to ski, bike, and buy houses. And that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I started looking at different communities and ended up settling on this little community called Cranbrook, BC. I liked their economics, and it had the right balance for me. And so I leveraged all the money I had and bought a sixplex and a threeplex there, and didn't really think about cash flow or cap rates. I knew nothing about that stuff. Just I was going to get rich. The market's going to go up forever.
I'm going to buy some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then about 2007-ish, there started to be some crumblings in the wall, and 2008 things started to drop. And I'm putting money into the sixplex every month. I'm losing. The cash flow was negative. It was not a good deal. I didn't know it at the time. And I was sort of stuck with this property for quite a while because I was in a bit of a negative equity position at that point too. And but I loved real estate. I was passionate. I was excited about it. And so I was like, I need to learn how to do this better. And so I started taking some courses. I started reading the Rich Dad, Poor Dads and the Don Campbell books, and listening to all the podcasts that I could get my hands on, including Dave's, and just absorbing whatever information I could. Started taking some courses through UBC, and eventually got a diploma in urban land economics, specializing in property development, just absorbing real estate. And then with that, that took several years. Then I started, I sold the sixplex and then just started building a smarter portfolio, focusing on cash flow, focusing on value add, and just on the small scale, a threeplex, a fourplex, little deals here and there, and then managed to get a 16 unit mobile home park, and that was about at the point where I started connecting with a bunch of people and getting a bit of a network, and then I started partnering on a couple of deals, and that's where things sort of not leveled up a notch or two. And I bought a 36 unit senior facility, and that
Like
was a
a
pretty interesting deal.
55 plus or
Well, it's
75 plus?
sort of it's assisted living, and so we didn't
Okay,
necessarily
cool.
have an
Yeah.
age cap, but it was designed for people with limited abilities to live independently. But the interesting thing is, we bought this in 2019, right at the start of COVID. So we bought this was a renovated building, a beautiful place, but it was empty. And that was the catch. And so, right at the start of COVID, we bought an empty seniors facility, and
Right.
it was the
That could
right
go two
deal.
ways. I'm interested to see because it could go two ways at this point. From that, it could either fill right up or stay completely empty. So what happened?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, right at the start of COVID, this is right when, people were dying in these facilities. There was no vaccine yet, and people were
Hmm.
afraid. And we had a heck of a time getting anybody to move into this place. We
Yeah.
uh, we started with $100,000 sort of reserve fund, and we were blasting through this reserve fund quickly, placing maybe a tenant every month, and this property was just sort of eating us alive. And so my partner and I were 50-50 partners. We decided that to hedge our bets, we would list the property for sale. Meanwhile, we're just going to keep grinding, and we pivoted. We got away from some of that independent living model, and just had to, do whatever we could to just fill some rooms and get some
Yeah.
income from this place. And but at the end of the day, right as we're about, I think 30 out of the 36 units were full, and we were starting to cash flow. An investor approached us and wanted to buy the property, and we had a good exit, and we actually made pretty decent cash on the deal. And I think we held it for just over a year. And
Hmm.
we did have a vendor take back mortgage for a couple of years, but we actually ended up just selling the property. A bit of a flip. Wasn't the plan.
Yeah. The
um,
flip was that you got the people in, right?
yeah, yeah,
Empty,
and
empty, relatively worthless. Leased like an apartment, you know, good leases, good tenants. You can move that.
and we'd put in a management structure. We had a restaurant that was a catering, the independent living side, and so we'd certainly added some value there. But I think we also realized that we don't know the independent living
Business
need.
model.
Yeah, yeah, and so we got out of that, and pretty happy we did. I'm sure the next the buyer did incredibly well with it, but we made a few bucks. But we also learned some pretty good lessons there too, and it was an interesting deal. It was the right deal. It was a heck of a deal, but it was the worst timing for it. And a
Yeah.
year,
There's no way you could have projected that unless you had a crystal ball.
yeah, yeah. Well, not totally true, because we actually had an accepted offer just as COVID was starting, and so we just as COVID was getting going, we're like, well, is
Or you
this
could have
the
exited.
thing?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
option to like lose your deposit or something like that. Like it was beyond conditions already, or you still had conditions on it.
We Before conditions were removed, we had chances to back out, and I think what we didn't look at is the changing sort of risk profile of this deal and how it was evolving, and that the deal was getting riskier and riskier as COVID became more of an issue, and we didn't maybe
Yeah.
factor that into the deal. And so, at the end of the day, we did okay, but yeah, definitely some lessons there. And even just the operating of this facility, it's a niche that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm trying to maybe just focus a bit more on my core, what I'm good at, and just pick a niche and stick with it. But at the same time, it's hard. We're in a small community. Cranbrook's 20,000 people, and so
Mhm.
when you see a good deal, it's probably not going to be in your exact niche you want to be in.
Mhm.
So do you jump on a niche deal because it's a good deal when you don't really know what you're doing? In hindsight, I don't think so anymore. I want to stay in my lane and focus on what I know.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because if you know Ryan Carr out of Ontario, he's got a book out called The Highest and Best Used Playbook. And I asked him, Ryan, what's your niche? And he said, agility and management. So it wasn't the deals. It wasn't like I'm a single family guy or I'm a apartment guy. I'm a agility, adaptability, and management systems. That's my niche. And so it's interesting that you say that it's not always in your lane. Um, what he did is he made his lane all lanes. Like he made his lane being good in any lane. So yeah, definitely in the small markets, you do have to, like, some places like a mining town are like a one trick pony. It's like high cash flow, cheap house rentals, like that. But Cranbrook's a different kind of animal, um, because it is a little bit diverse. It's a little bigger too. It's like 20,000 is not a small town, but it's not a big town either. It's approaching like the 30-40,000 mark, which makes it into, maybe, is there's a hospital in town.
Yeah, we've got a regional hospital. We have a small college, and we're in sort of the Kootenay Mountain region. So we're 4 hours from Calgary and like 6 hours from Kelowna, and so we're stuck in sort of this no man's land in the mountains. And it's a great little neck of the woods here. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely challenges in the small town, but you can definitely pull it off. So what is your business that you're focusing on right now?
Sure. So the other deal that I purchased 5.5 years ago was a 28 unit hotel. And
Hmm.
original business plan was just strictly monthly rentals. The numbers were really good just to rent this place out by the month. But what we started to discover, this was right downtown, a beautiful old brick building. We needed a boutique downtown hotel. And
Hmm.
so I started sort of playing around with that model, ended up basically going full hog into the boutique hotel business, which again is another niche that I know nothing about and is very complex. And so I've been sort of knee deep in that project. But Yeah, it's another one of those lessons where I don't love being an operator. That's not my expertise. I'm better at putting these deals together and being creative, the development side of things, and being an operator to me just sort of drags me down. The friend you're talking about in Ontario, his ability to manage and be agile, that's great for a certain mindset. For me, that's not what I want to do. And so we're looking at exiting out of this property, and we see some interesting niches in our community in the Kootenay region, and so we're looking at focusing on some of those.
Yeah, it seems like your skill is trend identification. You're looking at trends and you're seeing them and you're like, okay, this is what's emerging. How can we get a piece of that action while it's happening? So what do you see emerging, and how are you capitalizing on that?
Sure. So the monthly rentals, there's a shortage all across Canada of monthly
Hmm.
rentals. Everybody knows that. Cranbrook is just the same, and we see it day in day out. People calling me looking for monthly rentals. There just isn't enough. We can't grow as a city. We're not going to get over 20,000 population until we start building some more affordable, obtainable type housing. And so that's what I want to start to focus on. And so we've partnered with a builder locally, purchase a piece of land, 3 acres in city limits, and we're going down that rabbit hole of creating rental units, probably on the more affordable spectrum, probably through the CMHC MLI Select program, and just
Hmm.
building some rental units. And part of it is finding a niche and profiting in it. But part of it is just making our community better, and that's one of the things I love about real estate is that we can, by fulfilling a niche, we can make money, but we also make our communities better. And so I enjoy that aspect of it too, just seeing what does our community need, and then trying to bring it.
Hmm. Well, and it's interesting because I have this investor friend. I said, "What do you like to buy?" And he said, "Nothing. What I buy is what people want." And so that's really been his business model that had success in, is that he's not like buying on his own emotional, like, oh, I'd love to build an apartment block. He's like, he'll only do that if that's what other people want to participate in. So it's really like, it's not really about us. It's about what the community does need and what is profitable. Like, you know, you can't sell watermelons in the wintertime like you can sell them on a hot day. So don't invest in watermelons in January, but in July you can make some money. So as far as capital is concerned, you talked about going into this assisted living building and this boutique hotel. Um, those are likely not, you know, capital. Those are capital intensive projects. That's not a small chunk of change to get into either of those buildings. What have you been doing to finance those, and how do you plan to finance this apartment construction?
Sure. So I think part of it is I've always been living within my means, and I live pretty modestly, and so I've been able to build up a bit of a nest egg, and that helps sort of playing the monopoly game, buying the houses, and eventually I managed to get the hotel. We do have general partners, limited partners, and so obviously I'm a general partner in most of these deals. Then
Mm-hmm.
often we'll be bringing in a couple limited partners. At least we did in the hotel with the seniors facility. It was just myself and a friend of mine that were both generals. But for the next deals, yeah, we're looking at either having somebody on the private equity side or maybe a private loan, looking at those kind of scenarios, especially when you look at building apartment buildings, very capital intensive. And yeah, so that's going to be the next step is finding some people that share our vision and want to make some a difference in the community, and looking for long-term cash flow. The interesting thing about build to rent, at least in our neighborhood, land isn't particularly expensive, and so we've got that working for us. The actual build costs are similar to what they would be anywhere else, maybe a little bit higher just because of some inefficiencies, but because our land costs are so cheap, and actually the permitting process is usually pretty fast. Often, we can do pretty well, and these, even with the higher interest rates, we're still seeing these properties cash flowing and being viable
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of times in the metros, the land is, you know, almost know that going in, you're going to be upside down. Like you're going to be upside down for 10 years or 15 years, just because they know that they got that, you know, the farmer's selling off his land, and it's not a deal. The deal has long sailed, but people are investing, institutions are investing in these places, knowing that it might be 10 years, it might be 15 years, but at some point the appreciation will outpace the kind of bad equity on the purchase. Whereas like in smaller towns, that's really where you're seeing affordable multifamily being constructed, because, you know, there's not, I don't know how many people are like, I'm going to go buy some dirt in Cranbrook. You know, this is like you and another guy maybe, but yeah, that's great. And we are having a housing shortage. So the CMHC has really stepped up in allowing us to finance some of those things. Whereas, you know, if you had to bring in all private capital and things like that, like the program's there. I don't think a lot of people know about it. And maybe they don't want to participate in it, but there are options out there, as you said, for people who want to like construct things and participate with CMHC's plan on affordable housing. So that's great that you're taking advantage of that. Now, as far as how far along you've got the plans in the hand, or you just have the dirt, where are you guys at in that project right now?
This particular deal, and we've got sort of three projects that are viable sort of in our pipeline, but this one's a bit of an odd property. So again, 3 acres in city limits. There's a 16 unit beautiful old brick building that just fallen into disrepair. So we actually got an accepted offer, and we removed conditions, and we're supposed to get possession almost a year ago. So December 7th, 2022, we were supposed to get possession of this property, and there was a fire in the
Mm-hmm.
16 unit building. It essentially got condemned. And
Yeah.
so now we're waiting for the insurance claim process to happen. And we've been waiting for a year. So we still have an accepted offer on this property. I think there's a real value add here from this insurance claim, and likely the insurance claim is going to be much more than what we're actually buying the property for. And so the potential to actually be getting this 3 acres in city limits for close to zero is actually a very reasonable outcome at this point. And so, yeah, that's where we're sitting at. And so we haven't started the process of rezoning or doing any of that because we don't actually own the property. But we'll be going in with a cash offer. There's no mortgage on this property, and so we'll secure it with cash with a couple of partners. And then the plan is to rezone and start building some multifamily. And so that's where we're at right now. So probably realistically, it's going to be at least 6 months to a year before there's shovels in the ground, and at least 6 months to a year past that before we get occupancy.
Because yeah, those brick buildings, once they burn up the middle, like everything's wood apart from the outside, so it just turns into like a cannon of fire, and that they go pretty quick. We have a lot of those in the local market here, that especially when it gets cold and they're vacant, and someone's hanging out in there, and the next thing you know, it's burnt to the ground. So yeah, I would say, it's really interesting that there's a lot going on, and you can make money in a small town doing real estate, because sometimes people don't think that, but the reality is that somebody's got to do it. Those houses didn't just immaculately conceive themselves. They didn't get dropped from space. Some guy like yourself, like Greg here, built those houses. So what would you say to someone who's looking at investing in a small town, or maybe is in a small town and is thinking, I can't do it?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to look at is the demographics and the metrics of that community. And for me, I want to make sure it's not a one horse town. You want to see some economic diversity. You want to see some stability. Is this a growing community, or is this a shrinking community? And those are all important things. Step one that you should be looking at. And if you're in a shrinking community, and maybe you love to live there, but maybe that's not the place to be building or investing in real estate, I'd probably look at other communities at that point. The next step is, if you're in a smaller community, really you need to be focusing on your cash flow, because you're not going to be getting probably the same capital appreciation that you're going to be in the bigger cities. So look for cash flow. And so right now, where you're looking at, I'm not even sure what typical cap rates would be in say Calgary, maybe in the 4 to 5% cap rate range.
Yeah, at best maybe like 7 or 8 if you really got a great deal. But
yeah. Whereas it's a lot easier to find higher cap rate deals here. And so your money should spit out more income. There should be better return on investment in the short term out here. And as far as I'm concerned, it's that cash flow that's your safety net against vacancies, against higher interest rates. So I love the cash flow. And so if you're going to invest in smaller communities, make sure it's cash flowing, because the appreciation might be slower to come. And so you want to focus
than a metro, right? Because you don't have that immigration on scale like you do in a big city like Calgary or Edmonton, something like that. So that's fantastic. If people want to reach out to you and they want to learn more about your projects, find out what you're about, and ultimately possibly partner on some of your projects, how do they do it? Where do they find you? What should they do?
Yeah, so the best way, it's not hard to just Google me, Greg Eaton, and hunt me down. My website is gregeatonrealestate.com. And so you can find me there, and just send me a message, and let's chat. And maybe there's some synergy there. Maybe there's something we could work on together, maybe not. But just send me a message. I love to chat real estate, and I can talk about this stuff all day long.
So for people listening at home, Eaton, like the old store, EATON, GregEaton.com, you said?
GregEatonRealestate.com.
Cool. Perfect. So that was amazing. I mean, we interview a lot of people from the big cities, and it's great to have some perspective from the people who are still doing it in markets that aren't so obvious. I really appreciate your time, Greg.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.